You're in a meeting, important one, and your stomach starts churning. Not because you ate something wrong, but because somewhere deep in your nervous system, an old alarm is going off. That knot in your stomach? That wave of nausea before a difficult conversation? For millions of people, these aren't just nerves. They're echoes of something that happened decades ago. Today, we're looking at research that changes how we understand digestive problems and why what happened to you as a child might still be affecting your gut right now. Here's something most doctors never ask when you come in with stomach issues. What happened to you as a kid? A new study suggests maybe they should. Researchers at NYU analyzed data from nearly 12,000 children. What they found connects childhood stress to digestive problems in ways we've never understood before. And the implications? They could change how we treat gut disorders entirely. Because different types of childhood adversity appear to create different patterns of gut dysfunction. Let's start with something that might surprise you. Your gut has its own nervous system. It's called the enteric nervous system, and it contains more neurons than your entire spinal cord. Scientists sometimes call it the second brain. And here's the thing, it develops during childhood in constant conversation with your central nervous system. This two-way communication, the gut-brain axis, it never stops. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, your gut and brain are talking to each other. When that communication develops normally, everything works smoothly. But when stress disrupts that development during childhood, the effects can last a lifetime. This is what makes the new research from NYU so significant. They weren't just looking at whether childhood stress affects the gut. They were asking how and why different stresses create different problems. The study used data from the NIH-funded Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development Study, the ABCD study, which has been tracking nearly 12,000 children since 2016. This is one of the largest longitudinal studies of child development ever conducted, and the researchers combined it with controlled experiments in mice to establish mechanism, not just correlation. What did they find? Gastrointestinal symptoms increased with any type of early childhood stress. Abuse, neglect, parental mental health problems, all of them connected to gut dysfunction. But here's where it gets really interesting. The researchers discovered that different biological pathways control different types of gut problems. The nerves responsible for gut movement, motility, are controlled by separate pathways from the ones that control gut pain. Different systems, different responses to stress. Think about what that means for someone with digestive problems. For decades, we've treated IBS, abdominal pain, and motility issues as if they were all variations of the same thing. But they're not. A patient experiencing chronic gut pain without motility issues has something different happening neurologically than someone who has constipation but no pain. Same gut, different problems. The NYU team put it simply, and I'm paraphrasing here, a patient with pain but no motility issues would need a different treatment than someone who has constipation but no pain. This points toward personalized treatment approaches. Not one-size-fits-all solutions, but interventions targeted at the specific pathway that's been disrupted. Now, I want to be clear about something. This research doesn't mean your gut problems are all in your head. That's an outdated and frankly dismissive way to think about this. What the research actually shows is that psychological experiences create physical changes, real, measurable, biological changes in how your nervous system functions. One of the researchers made a point I think is crucial. Quote, "When patients come in with gut problems, what happened in their childhood is an important question to consider. This isn't about blame. It's not about making anyone feel worse about difficult experiences they've already survived. It's about understanding the mechanism so we can address it properly. The gut and brain communication superhighway, that's how the researchers described it. When it goes awry, people can experience digestive problems including IBS, abdominal pain, and motility issues. And here's something that adds another layer to this story. The gut doesn't just receive signals from the brain, it sends them too. This is a conversation, not a monologue. A comprehensive review in molecular psychiatry laid out the neurobiology of IBS, and it's far more complex than most people realize. Multiple systems, multiple pathways, multiple potential intervention points. The enteric nervous system, that second brain in your gut, it develops during a critical window in childhood, and stress during that window can alter how it's wired. Think of it like learning a language. There's a window when it's easy, when the brain is plastic and receptive. Miss that window, and the process is different, harder. The results less fluent. The mouse studies in this research were crucial. They allowed researchers to control for variables you can't control in human studies, and establish direct causal links. Now, some people have raised valid concerns about how well mouse models translate to human stress responses. Fair point. That's why the combination with human data is so important. The ABCD study provided the human data, nearly 12,000 children tracked over years. The mouse studies provided the mechanism. Together, they create a compelling picture. But I think there's something even more significant here than the science itself. It's what this research means for how we think about the mind-body connection. For too long, we've separated physical symptoms from psychological experiences, as if they exist in different universes. This research shows they don't. They're deeply, biologically connected. The study authors put it this way: this developmental history could inform how disorders of gut-brain interaction develop and how to treat them based on specific mechanisms. Specific mechanisms? That phrase is key, because it means we might be able to develop treatments that target the exact pathway that's been disrupted, not just mask symptoms. Adverse childhood experiences, what researchers call ACEs, include abuse, neglect, household dysfunction, and parental mental health problems. All were linked to increased GI symptoms. And the more ACEs a child experienced, the more likely they were to have gut problems. This wasn't a subtle effect, it was clear and dose-dependent. Now, if you're someone who experienced childhood adversity and you're dealing with digestive issues, I know this information might bring up complicated feelings, but understanding the connection can actually be empowering. Because if we know where the problem originates, we have more options for addressing it. So what does this mean practically? If you're dealing with chronic digestive issues, it might be worth considering whether childhood stress could be part of the picture. This isn't about self-diagnosis, but it is about having a more complete conversation with your healthcare provider. The research suggests your developmental history matters. The researchers emphasize that understanding this gut-brain connection is biological, not psychological in the dismissive sense. These are real physical changes in your nervous system. Consider mentioning your childhood history when discussing digestive problems with a doctor, not to seek a diagnosis, but to help them understand the full picture of your health. There are treatments that specifically target the gut-brain connection. Gut-directed hypnotherapy, for example, has shown real results in clinical trials for conditions like IBS. Cognitive behavioral therapy designed for gastrointestinal conditions, CBT-GI, is another option that addresses this connection. It works on the communication, not just the symptoms. If you're a parent, this research suggests that addressing childhood stress early might have long-term benefits beyond mental health. It could affect physical health for decades. Consider that early intervention programs, family therapy, and stress reduction strategies aren't just about feelings. They may be protecting the developing nervous system in measurable ways. Now, there are some debates worth acknowledging. Some clinicians worry that emphasizing childhood origins could make patients feel their conditions are untreatable. That's not what this research says. Understanding the origin helps us target the treatment. It doesn't mean the origin has to be relived or that the damage is permanent. The nervous system retains plasticity throughout life. The researchers were careful to note that this developmental history could inform treatment, suggesting that knowing the pathway helps choose the right intervention. The question of how to sensitively ask about childhood trauma in gastroenterology settings is real. Doctors often have limited time, and this requires skill and training. If your doctor doesn't ask about childhood history, you can bring it up yourself. Something simple like, I had a stressful childhood. Could that be relevant to what we're discussing? And here's something worth remembering. Acknowledging the connection doesn't mean dwelling on the past. It means using that information to make better decisions about treatment going forward. If you're working with a therapist for other reasons, consider bringing up any chronic digestive issues you have. They might be more connected than you realized. If you found this research as fascinating as I did, consider subscribing. We dig into psychology research like this regularly, the kind of stuff that changes how you see yourself. Now let me bring this back to where we started. That knot in your stomach before a difficult meeting. That wave of nausea when stress hits. What if it's not just nerves? What if your gut is responding to patterns laid down decades ago in a developing nervous system that was just trying to adapt to a stressful world? The research tells us this isn't imagination. It's biology. Real pathways, real changes, real consequences that science is finally beginning to understand. And with that understanding comes something powerful, the possibility of treatments that don't just mask symptoms, but address the actual mechanism, the communication that went wrong. Your gut has been keeping records that your conscious mind forgot. But maybe that's not such a bad thing to know, because now you can start to read them. The gut-brain axis is a conversation that never stops. And what this research shows is that the language of that conversation gets written early, but it's not necessarily the final draft. Thanks for listening. Take care of your gut. It remembers more than you think. Until next time.